The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publishing sane fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased, false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media without checking facts first. Unfortunately, this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
There are those who walk through life as though it were a script already written, each moment dictated by forces unseen. And then there are those who tear the script apart, refusing to accept the illusions cast before them. Guy Debord was one such man, a philosopher, a filmmaker, a revolutionary who saw the spectacle not as life itself, but as a shadow of what life could be. In 1931, Guy Debord was born into a world scarred by war and shaped by change. As a young man, he gravitated to the avant-garde, those restless souls who sought not to mirror the world, but to remake it. In the 1950s, Debord helped form the Situationist International, a collective of artists, writers and thinkers united by a single purpose: to awaken a society lulled into complacency by the spectacle of its own creation. The Situationists were not merely critics, they were architects of rebellion. They sought to create situations, ephemeral moments of lived experience that could shatter the monotony of modern life. They believed in play over production, imagination over conformity, authenticity over spectacle.
Good evening. Konrad Adenauer is dead. The man Eisenhower called one of the great statesmen of our time, and Churchill called the greatest German statesman since...
At the heart of this movement was the Society of the Spectacle, Debord's seminal book published in 1967. It was both a manifesto and a mirror, reflecting the ways in which modern society had transformed reality into an endless stream of images. The book laid bare the mechanisms of alienation and control, revealing a world where the spectacle dictated not just what we saw, but how we lived.
Peter Jennings with the news, a 30-minute summary of the day's events, brought to you Monday through Friday in color by ABC News.
Debord, their most vocal leader, was both poet and provocateur. He challenged the very foundations of capitalism, not with weapons, but with ideas sharp enough to cut through the veil of illusion.
The one thing the former pilot knew was that if he had good fighter cover, that he had a much better chance of making it back home alive. There's a new breed of fighter pilot that's writing history in airplanes just like this one. He's fighting this war at treetop level in direct support of the ground forces in the jungle of South Vietnam. When those soldiers need his firepower.
But Debord was not content to speak only through words. He turned to cinema, the very medium through which the spectacle operates, to expose its mechanics. His films, unorthodox and unapologetic, were acts of defiance. They rejected narrative, refused comfort, and demanded the viewer think, feel, and awaken.
By one vote, his own. From that day on, he worked for the reconciliation of his country and its ancient enemy, France. He worked to establish good relations with Israel. He tried to unify East.
In his 1973 film adaptation of The Society of the Spectacle, Debord transformed his philosophy into an audiovisual assault. Images collided with words, shattering any illusion of coherence, forcing the audience to confront the spectacle's hold on their minds. It was not entertainment. It was a wake-up call.
From genocide to garden, that in a sense was what Adenauer wanted for his people, and his life was a single-minded search for peace. In Washington tonight, Edward P. Morgan has some comment on the man and on his reading.
Konrad Adenauer was stretched tall in history. His life covered a century, minus only 9 years, and what a century. Born in the wake of Bismarck's victory over Napoleon III in the Franco-Prussian War, Adenauer survived the 2 world wars, which his country, first under Kaiser Wilhelm, then under Hitler, lost so disastrously. It was a fortune.
By the late 1960s, Debord's ideas had ignited a spark. In May 1968, Paris became a battlefield of ideas. Students and workers rose together, challenging not just a government, but a way of life governed by consumption, alienation, and control. The Situationists were there, not as leaders but as catalysts, fueling the imagination of a generation.
Isolated from the West again. This was why the Bonn-Paris alliance was so vital, though later de Gaulle dominated it at the expense of the united Western Europe. Adenauer detested the British, who fired him as the post-war mayor of Cologne. He was devoted to President Eisenhower.
For a brief moment, the spectacle trembled, and though the movement did not last, its echoes linger still, like graffiti scrawled on the walls of history.
Just to bring you up to date on the news of Europe, if you are just turning on your radios, Great Britain is now at war with Germany. Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain announced this fact in a broadcast at 6:15 New York time, 6:15 Eastern Daylight Time. A brief broadcast of about 5 minutes duration, which was carried over the CBS network. And the Prime Minister said that he had to...
Today, the spectacle is omnipresent, more pervasive than even Debord could have imagined. It lives in the algorithms that shape our feeds, the ads that follow our every move, the curated lives we present to one another through glowing screens. We consume images, and in doing so, are consumed by them.
Have been delivered to Germany. But at the end of that time, hostilities must cease, or Germany and Britain would be at war. At 11:15, the Prime Minister spoke to the nation.
I am speaking to you in the cabinet room at 10 Downing Street. This morning, the British ambassador in Berlin handed the German government the final note, thinking that unless we heard from them by 11 o'clock, that they were prepared at once to withdraw their troops from Poland, the state of war would exist between us.
But Debord's work endures, not as a relic of the past, but as a mirror held to the present. He reminds us that the spectacle's power lies not in its images, but in our willingness to believe them.
Spencer Island getting close to 72 miles per hour. That's not associated with any type of thunderstorm activity. These are just wind gusts that we could potentially see tonight. And still looking at about 50 mile per hour wind gusts by 3 a.m. That high wind warning in place until 6 a.m.
The decisive battle of war has begun. That Adolf Hitler realizes himself. He made plain on confirmation to the troops in the West just as they began to march into the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg at dawn today. He said, the hour of the decisive battle for the future of the German nation has come.
I had made up my mind at the beginning, because he went out there as a newspaper, but I want to stay in Nazi Germany as long as I can get the essence of the truth there. And I see in any dictatorship, you can't tell everything. When the censors cut too much out, I would just say, okay, there's probably a bluff to it, because the Germans wanted to be on the air, from a foreign country, but they gave all the prestige that they wanted to get broadcasts, and you were bound to do so when they didn't allow enough copyright, since I know other people you wrote and when you wrote a script, you thought the sound of the spoke. And of course, I had learned also from Hitler.
Electricity is out for some residents here.
Hitler was a man who could write out speech. And secret was people on radio
Absolutely no
was speaking on
fatalities.
this.
Can confirm that. So that
You
is
want to
something
say
he's
that
not sure
radio
about injuries. We know some homes were damaged by this storm as well. Nick, it's gotten significantly cooler here as well. It was warmer when we were coming from Rochester, but now it's colder and the wind is whipping. So still dangerous driving conditions as we were heading on 14 to here. We actually saw a semi flipped over because of the wind. So still dangerous driving conditions, windy conditions here. We'll have much more weather coverage coming up a little bit later on. Nick, I'll send it back to you.
What then is the answer? To turn off the screens? To flee the cities and live in solitude? No. Debord did not advocate escape, but awakening. To see the spectacle for what it is to reclaim the power it takes from us. To create, not consume. To connect, not perform. To live, not watch. The spectacle thrives on our blindness, but even in its glare, there is light. The light of awareness, of resistance, of life lived fully, beyond the screens, beyond the illusions. In a world ruled by images, Guy Debord dared to dream of something more. His films, his writings, his rebellion against the spectacle, these are not just works of philosophy, they are acts of liberation. And they remind us, even now, that the world we seek is waiting to be rediscovered.
This is Apollo Saturn launch control, T-minus 3 hours, 4 minutes, 32 seconds and counting. Right on time as far as the astronaut countdown is concerned. The prime crew now departing from their crew quarters. 10, 9, ignition sequence start.
On, forward, 40 feet down, 2.5, picking up some dust, big shadow. I'm going to step off the limit. It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. It has a stark beauty all its own. It's like much of the high desert of United States. It's different, but it's very pretty out here.
Thank you for watching. Visit thirdmind.studio for more.